Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Community Conversation, a partnership series between the Prince George's County Memorial Library System and the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Office of Human Rights. With me today as co-hosts are Tiana Davis, the Outreach Specialist with the Office of Human Rights, and Dr. Audrey Lau, the Adult and Senior Services Specialist with the Library System. I do want to take a moment before we get going and acknowledge that this is our friend Tiana's last event with us as an Office of Human Rights employee, as she has been offered a fantastic new opportunity in Prince George's County government. But for those listening carefully, you'll hear that I emphasize it's her last event with us as an employee, because we definitely intend to drag her back as often as we possibly can. We're really happy for her that she's not going far. But we are going to miss her as a colleague and a partner in these events. She's been a fantastic coworker and a bringer of many wonderful things to all of us over the last couple of years. So Tiana, thank you for all that you have brought to us and for joining in this last, for you, community conversation with us. We are excited today to be in conversation with one of our new partners who is doing extraordinary things all around the region, Meagan Baco. Meagan Baco is the executive director of the nonprofit Anacostia Trails Heritage Area in Prince George's County, Maryland. The organization creates and supports cultural tourism and community development projects that enhance public spaces for residents, neighbors, and visitors alike. The Heritage Area is part of a unique Maryland statewide program and is one of only 4 states to coordinate this type of work. Meg has an academic background in historical preservation and environmental design with degrees from Clemson University and SUNY Buffalo. With 20 years in the field, Baco strives to create, fund, and complete projects that unite people and place. Meagan serves as board chair of the Maryland Museums Association and is on the board of directors of the National Preservation Institute and Maryland Tourism Coalition. Meg lives in Baltimore and spends their free time at CrossFit and community events. So welcome, Meg. It is a delight to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, friends and neighbors. I am pleased to be here. And Tiana, thank you for all that you do. I know that you're an integral part of the team. And on this auspicious, occasion, I hope that we have a great conversation together today.
To get us started, could you just talk to us a bit about what is the Anacostia Trails Heritage Area?
Sure. So there are fields of thought and fields of career paths that are not always as clear to folks as you sort of start in your academic and your young life. So I can't say that I was always interested in history, but really what brought me to community tourism and cultural tourism is through being inspired by place, primarily by architecture, but also how people interact with place, and how some places can be comfortable and some places can be uncomfortable, but also that we all sort of desire in a certain way to take part in our communities in the way that we're able, in the ways that make us feel comfortable. So I have a presentation prepared today that would be helpful if it was pulled up. I've titled it Inclusive Cultural Tourism. It is a pretty broad view of the work that I'm lucky enough to do every day. So I just want to share a little bit with everybody today about inclusive cultural tourism. So as the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Anacostia Trails Heritage Area, my daily work is, as a nonprofit, there's a lot of nonprofit hats and things that need to get done. But the content of our work is made up of the building blocks of arts, history, culture, and nature, and where those resources, assets, and communities sort of overlap. And a lot of times those overlap in parks and towns and at special events. And so you can sort of see the mission of the organization, but then also how it plays out. And all of those good things that I've mentioned, so I'm going to be calling that cultural tourism or community tourism. I get to do that work professionally in Prince George's County, where I got to meet today's wonderful hosts. And I've also worked in Buffalo, New York, and I've also worked in Charleston, South Carolina, Seattle, Washington, and Washington, D.C. If you go to the next slide, it should be a little bit more about me. I have been on a couple of these sessions before, and I think part of that's really interesting is getting to know the people who are you're having these conversations with. So sort of gives you an outline of the things I like to do and what I bring to my daily sort of work, because everybody approaches this differently. When you think of the word inclusive, some of that is internally driven, right? Things that affect us, things that temporarily affect us, things that affect others that we may not be aware of or be able to empathize with at the time. So it's always good to know sort of who you're chatting with. So that's a little bit more about me. Kyla did a great introduction, so we can go to the next slide. Oh, actually, I think I can do some slides. Okay, great. So again, community tourism, also known as ecotourism, cultural tourism. The distinction between what I would call commercial tourism or traditional tourism is that there's a focus on the parity of investment made that benefits as equally as possible residents as well as visitors. So that's the line that I try to walk, which is if I have access to community development funds or a project, how can I also make sure that that's inclusive to visitors? If I have access to tourism funding or marketing funding or things like that, how can I make sure that that information is authentic to the community that we're inviting people to visit? So it sort of weaves those two things together in a way that I think and has been proven to be how many people like to travel. Oftentimes, if you think about where you want to go, maybe on your bucket list, near and far, or when friends, family comes to visit, what are some places around you that you think of, oh, when this person comes to visit, we have to go to this museum, or, you know what, this person would love this trail and I can't wait to show them this new sculpture or this new coffee shop. So it's those places that become meaningful to us and that we also want to share. And then there is that commercial aspect. But again, we try to make sure that that's all tied into also benefiting local residents. So I will go to the next slide. Some of the ways that our work, which can be very broad and can come across as slightly nebulous, is focused on recreation. So nuts and bolts or capital projects that we've worked on in Prince George's County include the Rhode Island Avenue Trolley Trail, which runs from College Park to Hyattsville. We've also worked on some small park projects, like a pocket park. So it's really tucked into the neighborhood. It's not a huge expansive place where you might be walking on a trail, but you're sort of taking a respite from the rest of your day or meeting with a friend. So we've been able to work on a project called Entrepreneurs Park in North Brentwood. And then I had a site visit earlier today in Colmar Manor, which is the site of the historic Dueling Creek. And we're working on a trail extension project there to connect that smaller portion of a trail to the main Anacostia River Trail, which goes all the way to DC and points north. So some of that work is focused on recreation. Additionally, and again, some of my background in historic preservation, I love architecture. I love being able to work on physical buildings. Our office is based in a historic building called Pyramid Atlantic Art Center. We've also worked on other historic properties here in Hyattsville. And we're working on a very interesting project in southern Prince George's County, because we work across the county on a place called Upper Notley Hall, which is a tremendously old property. I'm sure that there's my architectural history background is failing me, but there are very specific ways to describe historic architecture. But what I find interesting at that site is the layers of time. When a historic site gets to be about 200 years old, you start to realize that's sort of had multiple lifespans. And that's when I think things get really interesting, when you can start to see the juxtaposition of place. So that Upper Notley Hall was a plantation style home, but then in the late 1890s and 19 teens, it was a Black run amusement park. So you sort of get to see these, but the site stays the same. How do you sort of tackle those histories and share those histories? To me, I sort of love where those conflicts are, but there's definitely skill to telling that story in those places. As it gets to public history, we've worked on projects related to women's suffrage, also the Battle of Bladensburg. Our office is very near the Battle of Bladensburg. And for Marylanders who are on the call, if you were around in, let's say 2010, 2012, 2014, there was a lot of emphasis on the bicentennial of the War of 1812. There was a lot of battlefields, a lot of significant events took place related to the War of 1812 here in Prince George's County. So that's been a long-term project of my organization. But one of the projects that I really wanted to highlight with you all today is our Civil Rights Trail. So several years ago, again, my organization as a nonprofit applied for funding to the National Park Service, as well as the Maryland Heritage Areas program. And we were able to apply for and were awarded funding to take on a brand new project at the time, which we called the Prince George's County Civil Rights Trail. So it was a public history project. It was a partnership project that spanned many years, many entities and agencies and researchers, many site visits, many communities. And one of the primary players that I want to make sure to name specifically is that Prince George's County has a Black History program, and they have full-time staff who are incredibly knowledgeable, well-researched, well-written, and fantastic also storytellers and interpreters of Black history in Prince George's County. And we worked with them a lot on this project. So one of the ways that a public historian sort of approaches a project is that you might not be able to bite the entire topic. And so when we were thinking about civil rights history in Prince George's County, we focused on housing, we focused on recreation, and also on entertainment. And there are many other topics in civil rights history that you could, of course, choose. But because of the mission of our organization, we also thought it would be interesting to dig into the civil rights movement as it relates to recreation or how it relates to entertainment, because that's partially what we do today. So we worked, again, with many different communities. We've been really proud to, once the project was completed, have tour groups come visit some of the sites with us during national conferences related to public history and museums that were taking place in Maryland. So that's been really special for us to be able to showcase the sites that we worked with and had really meaningful relationships with. The image that we're looking at here is St. Mark's Church. That's in Laurel, Maryland. That is a longstanding Black-led church where some of the congregants were part of the original March on Washington. We were able to visit the church, have both in-person and virtual oral history sort of sessions with them, and we learned a lot, and they were really sharing first-person level research, which is not always, as a historian, you don't always get to talk to the source themselves. So I definitely want to make sure that that they're mentioned specifically, and they're one of the sites where we put a physical sign in the ground. One of the other topics that we researched was housing discrimination, and the site that was where a sign now stands related to housing segregation is called Bel Air at Bowie. There was a protest there in the 1960s that there was a strict enforcement of a whites only policy during that sort of home building time period. And there was a protest there that, again, was led by activists and neighbors. And that was relatively well-documented protests. So we have wonderful, rich historic images. And those are all also on the sign for people to learn about and to sort of experience in the place that they happened. Again, we were talking about recreation and access to the outdoors. One of the other stories that was selected was the story of the desegregation of the Laurel Pool. So what started as a segregated pool in 1953 was originally a private pool. It was owned by a local Lions Club. And what's interesting is this pool is not terribly far from mentioned. And so they were specifically part of the Black community of Laurel that were unable and excluded from being part of this private pool. What another remarkable part of this story is that actually the city of Laurel purchased the pool and then desegregated it. So in this instance, we actually have where some stories you might say the municipality has also segregated the pool. In this case, the city of Laurel purchased the pool and reopened it and invited everybody from the community, including St. Mark's, to be a part of the community pool. So that you can read about. Literally, the sign is in front of the pool in Laurel, and the pool is still open today. So again, it's a historic story, and you have the opportunity to go right to that place and even walk a couple blocks to see St. Mark's and get a sense of how these communities, what that may have been like to be a young child walking and then seeing those whites only signs, or vice versa. Understanding that you can invite your friends to the pool for those reasons. And again, this research was, the folks that lived it were instrumental in this research. So I certainly wanted to highlight that one. Lastly, there's this sort of amazing story of Black entertainment right outside of Washington, D.C., where Prince George's County is, and specifically in the town of North Brentwood. So North Brentwood is sort of I don't want to say sibling city, but because it would potentially be too kind historically, but just outside of Washington, D.C., there's a town in a town of North Brentwood. One was historically white, one was historically African American. There were literal physical barriers between the towns. You sort of huge bollards put in between the street that otherwise would have been able to be transverse to go into each other's town. And those two communities sort of grew up in parallel, but never really sort of came together. So when African American performers would come to DC to perform, from across the country and across the East Coast, they weren't able to necessarily find housing or hospitality in Washington, D.C. And many, many came to the town of North Brentwood in Prince George's County. One of those places was called Sis's Tavern. It existed in the 1910s through the Civil Rights Movement, and it held small performances and social get-togethers of Duke Ellington and Pearl Bailey and others, and over time just continued to serve the community, the Black community of North Brentwood. The property itself is owned by the town. They've just spent a lot of time and energy and skill renovating it. It is now open. It has wonderful murals inside that talk about the history of Sis's Tavern. There's also an outdoor pavilion to, again, bring that music and livelihood that the place has historically always held. And it's just a great example of sort of the continuity and legacy of, people, sort of making the most of a certain situation and leading their neighborhood in ways that were important to them. And now everybody is welcome there, and it's a place that we can all learn from. But again, there's a historic sign there. And again, you can be looking at the historic sign and thinking about the music you may have heard 50 years ago or more at Sis's Tavern. So those were sort of examples of the civil rights history that my organization has done. Again, we put 5 signs in the ground in different towns. And then we have a bilingual website where the same stories exist. They have a QR code on the sign, and then they also exist online. And those have stories that we weren't able to put a sign in. And then recently we were able to hire a researcher to do additional investigations, historical research into even more Black-led towns in Prince George's County. And those include Eagle Harbor and Fairmount Heights and others. There's just such a rich history of municipal leadership in Prince George's. And that was sort of a subsection of the civil rights overarching history that we wanted to tack into, because that legacy is enduring. It continues with many of these cities and towns. And I think some municipal leaders have even been a part of these conversations. The URL is there for you to explore the website. And please look forward to us adding some new stories there as well. One of the ways we were able to fund new research into the Civil Rights Trail that had existed a couple of years ago was that we received funding from the Maryland 250 Commission. This is sort of an interesting time to be a historian, perhaps it always is. And if you haven't heard already, because you're not a historian like me that lives it all the time, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the United States. The long word is semi-quincentennial. I've been practicing it for a while. I think I'm getting pretty good at it. I challenge you all to say it. Because my organization has done projects related to anniversaries and to public history in the past, we thought this is a great opportunity for us to create a new coalition of people who want to represent the history and legacy of Prince George's County, everything, including civil rights and other topics, War of 1812, American Revolution, the suffrage movement that I mentioned earlier. How can my organization, with the past experiences and skills that we've had in putting on programs and projects like this, how do we want to commemorate 250 years of American history in Prince George's County? So we came up with a group called PGC 250. We've been meeting now for almost 2 years. So we were planning ahead for this year, for 2026. We took all the resources we could from state and federal history organizations, and we came up with what we thought is the theme that most resonates with us and that we wanted to really highlight as we the people. So just thinking about the diversity over time and enduring diversity of Prince George's County. So we just finished a genealogy series. We are also planning some bike rides and boat rides because, again, we're an active organization. We love seeing people out there if they're able. And then we're also planning a block party. So we thought, instead of maybe a gala or maybe instead of something else, we thought that really seems right for what we're trying to accomplish. So on May 30th in Bowie, right in the civic area between the Bowie Branch Library and the Bowie Center for the Performing Arts, we are going to have a day-long celebration of music and cultural performances, drumming and dancing, music. We're also going to have some theatrical performances. We're going to have a mini pop-up museum. We are also going to have history panels. And it's going to be a great opportunity for everybody to come together and both, sort of look back. There's definitely going to be a historical aspect to it, but also be together in community, which is really another goal of our organization. And as much as we're, potentially focused on looking back, it's always about how we can either present that, through a new sign or a new website or a new event. So not just history for looking back, but also sharing it now and with all of our contemporary friends for today. So I think that's the end of my presentation. My contact information is there. My organization loves getting interesting phone calls about historical questions or things you want to improve in your community or places you want to visit. We do our best to be as responsive as possible, and we tend to all be rather curious and interested. So it's been my pleasure to share a little bit about what I do. I hope there are questions. I'm happy to answer them now or in the future. And again, my contact information is there. And thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm actually, while this is still on the screen, I'm going to read these out loud because we realize some people who are with us today maybe aren't reading the screen. And so I do want to make sure that you know Meg's email that they've shared. It's Meagan, MEAGAN, at Anacostia Trails, all one word, there is an S on the end, .org. So again, Meagan, MEAGAN, at anacostiatrails.org. And their phone number is 716-440-9025. All right. Meg, thank you so much for sharing all that information. It was so great. We're really excited about all that you're bringing. As I said when we began, you're kind of a new partner to us, and I just love your dynamism. I love your involvement, and obviously for us, it's obviously human rights, the symmetry with what you're working on, the Civil Rights Trail. It's all. I mean, it's great. It's just great. So, I guess my opening question to you is, what do you wish people, like when you go out in the community and you're like, hey, I'm with the Anacostia Trails Heritage Area, I'm guessing you got a lot of like, what does that mean? And so like, what's a big, like, if you could just have like one thing that's exciting to you that you could just, if there's going to be a takeaway, like what is it that makes this area so awesome for what you're doing?
Well, that's not a terribly easy question. And I think our name is long because it tries to encompass a feeling, right? It tries very hard to boil something down that in some ways is very hard to do. Depending on the audience, I definitely take full advantage of saying, oh, I work in architecture or I work in tourism. And so I don't, maybe that's cheating. I don't think it is. What I find, particularly interesting, really could be any topic. It's the enthusiasm and interest that somebody's sort of, sharing it. And then I think Prince George's County takes, quite a bit of pride in the past and also the future. And I think my organization is sort of uniquely placed to be sort of, again, trying to walk that tightrope between looking back, but providing true resources and experiences for today. So yeah, that was a hard one, but I think that would be my my answer.
All right, I'm going to go ahead. So one of the things I thought was so interesting is you talk about architecture and that history wasn't your first love, as some of us who are historians, can't stop, have been since they've been little. But I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you is, when you come to an area like Prince George's County and you want to do this work, what are some of the things that attracted you to this area? And maybe for those people out there who may not know Prince George's well or might be new, what are some of the things that you draw people to this area and you think that really are really great about being here?
That's a great question. Thank you. I lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for quite a while. And of course, the amount of, culture and museums that you can just sort of, you just feel it, right? But then being a resident there is also different than it is being a visitor to DC. So whenever I had friends and family visit me when I was living in DC, I said, don't get sucked into the museum all day. Don't let my museum friends watch this recording. Don't get sucked into a museum all day. Make sure you come outside and you take a look at the mall and you sort of take everything in as well in its context, in its greater context. And of course I would get a call and it was like, oh, it's 4:00 and we're starving and we haven't been outside and all this. And so something that I, try to remember is to, sort of explore the greater context of an area. And here in Prince George's, you can do that by bike, you can do that by kayak, you can walk, you can go to different towns. And each one has a slightly different vibe, but they're all so, connected through either trails or or other ways. So that's something that I certainly enjoy. And even though my work is based in Prince George's, I have had the opportunity to go to a lot of different places in Maryland, and I just love exploring. I'm never bored. I will follow a brown sign from the side of the road. It says so-and-so Lighthouse Museum. I'll say, okay, turn the car that way and go explore, even if it's just to read those signs outside. So that's sort of how I approach it. And I've learned to love history, I think, because you get to choose the histories you read now instead of sort of maybe in school. It's not everybody's favorite, but now there's so many interesting nonfiction books that, I mean, whether it's history or nonfiction sort of in a different genre, I've really started to enjoy that. And that's really sort of filled in a lot of gaps in sort of my understanding of the entire world and universe. But and I'm a lifelong learner, so I just keep reading.
So what is your preferred way, or like what way would you suggest people to participate in the trails? Like, I know there's no right way or wrong way, but is there a tour, or is it better solo? Is it better on a bike, or does it change depending on the trail?
That's a great question. Let's see, what's a good way to do it? I definitely like to sign up for something. I definitely like to say, okay, there's a class or an event, ditch out after that event. It's like, oh, okay, I want to go walk over here and do something else. So whatever really inspires you, if it is sort of that contemplative, sort of going for a walk and seeing sort of what you come across, or if it's getting friends together and going to a specific, event or location, or, we have wonderful special events on Bladensburg Waterfront Park. You can never go wrong with just starting your day or ending your day with Bladensburg Waterfront Park, or any of those other places that sort of speak to you. When I travel, and if I have a chance, I do try to bring a bicycle. So whether that's, if I'm in a conference or traveling, I do try to use as many modes of transportation as I can. And I'm lucky that I can do that. Otherwise, I'm sometimes the passenger in just reading off a Wikipedia article about something interesting I read about that town. So, my only advice for sort of traveling is, it's similar to my DC story, is it's okay to not spend all day reading every sign. It's okay to not spend every day in a museum. Like, approach it with, hey, I want to learn something new today. And then also, I think that's when it becomes not as much fun, is when we feel like we need to see every artifact. And so that's my only advice. And so if that makes people take that weight off their shoulders, like, oh, I didn't get to every exhibit, it's okay. You did it. You got out there, you learned something new, and that is an amazing thing to do for yourself. And you did good. You don't have to read every word.
Sorry, sometimes I get stuck trying to unmute. I apologize. So one of the things, I'm going to steal this question, I think, from Audrey, because I have a follow-up question to it. So I'm just going to take both of them, which is, first of all, learning about, so Audrey's question that I stole is talking about Trolley Trail Day. So we're wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about this. And I do want to, my part of this is that, you talked in your presentation about the work that you've done on Rhode Island Avenue, with that trail going down from College Park. And I've ridden on there from Lake Artemisia down. You can go down to DC. And whenever I'm not injured, which has not happened yet in 2026, but theoretically I'll be out there again. And I know that there's a big push to kind of extend this. And I wanted to, first of all, as I said, talk about Trolley Trail Day, but also like this connectivity really matters. And there are the signage and everything, but I was hoping you can just draw out, like, why do the trails, let's talk about trails.
Trails are sort of a remarkable expression of, I guess, a desire to be connected, a desire to be outside, a desire to be active. to the best of your ability. And I also think maybe the great, like, sort of thing about trails is it removes the big metal box that we spend a lot of our lives in. And, I love music and audiobooks as much as anybody else, but if you can sort of remove that armor and shelter and climate controlled metal box around you, you are just sort of instantly more human. You are instantly more approachable. And maybe, people can see your facial expression, or, just sort of get a sense of you. So I think, without stating too much of the obvious, I mean, I think that's just, a part of it, similar as being a pedestrian anywhere. I think that what I've learned in my years of working in cultural tourism and community tourism is that we should be grateful for everybody who's ever wanted to put a trail together. It is a long-term project. Some of the trails that I've been a part of, these are not 3 to 5 year projects. These are 8 to 10 year projects, because a trail, especially in the suburban, urban sort of environment of Prince George's County, it's not a trail through the woods. You've got multimodal vehicles and users. You have federal roads, you have state roads. And if I'm boring you already, that's sort of the point, is that for a trail to simply exist and be available to us to use, or to say, wow, I should do that one day, the amount of community-based work and effort that went into it is more than you can even imagine. We have a Maryland Service Corps member in our team right now, and we went to a opening of a new bridge along WB&A Trail. And he's sort of brand new to this world, and afterwards he's like, wow, it took 30 years to do that bridge. And I was like, yes. The idea that any trail or other public amenity exists means that somebody worked really hard to make that happen. So I will get back to the trolley trail in a minute. I also learned this about signs. Designing a sign and then making sure that you have the right to put it in, you've checked your utilities. So again, if you were listening to this presentation and you just take another look around, even just your own block, and just think about all the effort that went into those sort of amenities that we hopefully, take advantage of, but also maybe take for granted to a certain extent. So the trolley trail is an amazing story that I was not a part of from, the very get-go. I believe it was started in the city of College Park, and they were able to connect several neighborhoods, and then went to connecting several neighborhoods, connecting several towns. And so right now the trail goes from College Park through Riverdale Park and into Hyattsville. And so it's about, it's under 4 miles. It's a beautiful shared use trail. You can walk, bike, scoot, roll, whatever you can and care to do. And the environment is highly varied. Some of it has a tree canopy, and some of it is really tucked behind some small businesses, which are also wonderful. So I think just the whole experience is highly varied. So it sort of just keeps you interested around every corner. And it's a very hard trail to maintain because it covers multiple municipalities. Mm-hmm. So each municipality has to maintain and care for its sort of part of the trail. And I think that's another sort of aspect that the deeper I got into this work, sort of the more you appreciate that. So you're like, oh, shoot, there's a pothole. You're like, well, who do I call? Well, so there are people who are going to be able to do that. One of our goals with expanding the trolley trail, because it's been so popular and well used and really a point of pride for so many different communities, is we did additional research into the what do I want to call it? The path of the original streetcar, which is Streetcar 82. There are wonderful streetcar museums in Maryland, and we leaned on them to give us some research and information. And we want to connect the trail further south through North Brentwood, where I mentioned is Sis's Tavern, Brentwood, which also has wonderful amenities, and then into Mount Rainier, which has vibrant Gateway Arts District, and it abuts right up to Washington, D.C. So for us, that idea of connectivity and access is really important to us. We know a lot of people use it for fun. They use it for commuting. And it's something that's it's a through line for communities that, otherwise you got so much work to do in your own community, but remembering to look at it regionally. And I think that's one of the strengths of the heritage area and the concept of the heritage area is that we're working regionally. So we can you're working on this. Okay, you should really know this person. And so that's really a joy of some of the work that we get to do as well. But again, it takes a long time, and it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of infrastructure and skill and time. But it also needs organizations and individuals who want it to happen. And that's really why why many good things happen.
Well, I really want to highlight, you said it, and I just want to say it again, which is the connectivity. And I think the fact that we can walk or bike or skate or roll from, College Park down way into DC, like Navy Yard, I think. I mean, I haven't gone that far because I'm not in that kind of condition, but I've headed that direction. That is actually really incredible. We think about freedom of movement and accessibility. And, I was driving yesterday through a neighborhood that's just been, their connectivity has been limited because the purple line's going through. So, somebody who bought a house in some place, now they can't even cross the road, right? And I'm not saying that the purple line is not valuable. That is not a position that I'm taking. I'm just saying you see neighborhoods where there is a limited access, and you have something like the trolley trail or these trails, pedestrian trails or non-car trails, I guess I'll say, that you can in very short distance or a very short amount of time travel huge distances without your vehicle. And I just think that there's an equitable element to that, which is allowing access to areas. I really find it quite profound, actually.
Yeah, when I first moved here, I was wearing an Ole Miss sweatshirt, which is where I did my graduate career. And we were just walking on one of the trails, and people biked by, and somebody yelled, "Hotty toddy." And I was like, oh my, and when they came back on the way back, he said, "Hey, I live in DC. I figured we'd catch up with you again because you all are walking. And, there's this alumni thing going on next week, make sure you come." A few weeks later, I was able to hook up with some of the people. It was really cool, but it's happened so many times on the trail that I always tell people, if you want to meet people, wear your college sweatshirt, walk, a few miles or bike a few miles, and you will just see and meet all kinds of people. It's really great. So yeah, I almost wish that the purple line was the trolley trail though, because it just connects so many great parts of, great neighborhoods that, now that you're trying to input this transportation system in a existing, grid, it's not as easy. But I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you talked a little bit about expanding the trolley trail, and you talked a little bit about expanding the civil rights trail. So how do people help you do that kind of work?
This is a great question. I just had to get my pen out and write a couple things. Before we lose the thread of sort of what we were chatting about, I'm definitely presenting on the positivity of connectivity. And I think maybe why it is so profound, to use Kyla's word, is that access and place has been used to do the exact opposite for decades and centuries. So if you think about North Brentwood and Brentwood, for instance, that was as close to, physically divided. And then here comes somebody saying, we want to put the trolley trail through and connect your towns and cities. What a difference is made from that time period of the civil rights movement and before to now. And I think that point shouldn't be lost, because, architecture and planning and access and all of those have been used in the past and still now to create exclusive environments.
Absolutely.
And part of maybe why we're so moved by, some of the things we've been discussing today is that somewhere, in us, we sort of recognize that this place is special because it's not like that. And again, there's some internal stuff where you're like, I feel comfortable here, or I don't feel comfortable here. And I think some of that might be some deep humanity, right? That it's like, oh yeah, that is special, because it is different from maybe places that we've experienced in the past that have been specifically segregated. I live in Baltimore City, and there's, as much research as anywhere about sort of the weaponization of planning and how certain roads and planning, and this of course happens everywhere. So different roads or housing developments or disinvestment happens along what were called color lines or redlining. So please, if this interests you, sort of that sort of like sociology and place-based history, there are some fantastic resources if you look up like either history of urban planning or anything like that. And you could pick a place that you've either been to or you want to go to and just sort of learn about how those tools of planning have been used. And now my organization, with the support of, agencies and towns and cities and volunteers, sort of say, oh, we're gonna run a trail right through all these towns if you let us, right? So I think that might be partially what we're sort of responding to. Ways that people can work with us or sort of support us. Of course, as a nonprofit, we have a board of directors. We accept donations, tax deductible donations. We love when people come to our events, Trolley Trail Day, which will be June 13th this year. We expect, several thousand people. It's growing and continues to grow. So invite you to those events. You can go to our website, anacostiatrails.org. And then, I don't want to say easier, but ways I tend to find are, especially in Prince George's where we have so many municipalities, is to join a committee at your city or town. A lot of times here we have groups called green teams, and they do a lot with anti-litter and beautification, removal of invasive species and things like that. And I think they're always looking for volunteers. We don't currently have like a put you to work right away volunteer position, but we definitely would be happy to help people find ways to use their good time and talents to the benefit of the community. In Baltimore, where I live, I'm on my community board, and I deliver our little neighborhood newsletter and go to all the chili cook-offs. So yeah, I mean, sometimes that's, I think that's just a great way to be connected to your town and be a good citizen. Be a good resident, I should say.
I don't want us to miss the moment for you to talk about the sign behind you. Can you talk a little bit about the Bowie State University protests?
Right. So right before we went live, I thought, I think we have one of the signs that we actually were able to create. So this is a sign. It's 24 by 36. Which is a standard sign. So if you picture like sort of an interpretive sign that you've seen around, this one is for Bowie State University protests. Basically, I don't want to misquote the story. So I'll just say that there were discrepancies in the state-based salaries that were given to professors at white universities and Black state universities. And these students and some of their teachers protested to make clear that if you were a state employee doing the same job, you should be compensated at the same level. So that is a very interesting and pertinent, maybe reoccurring. We think about lack of parity in salaries and pay for everything from teachers to men's soccer players and women's soccer players. So there is definitely still, when you can make that distinction in dollar and cents, that somebody's missing out on their livelihood simply because of who they are. Yeah, that's still continues to, we still need to continue to draw attention to that. So yeah, this was one of the signs that we produced, and then it was harder to find a place to actually put it. So it lives in my office. I sometimes take it to events. And then, yeah, I wanted to show that, for a historic sign, it's nice and big and bright, and we try to do big pictures on them so that, it's not all text, and people can sort of interact with the history for as long as they are interested and things like that. And then there's QR codes on that go to our bilingual website. So we try to make those as accessible as possible. Of course, we could do more. I'd love to maybe attend another conversation about how I can make some of our work even more accessible and inclusive. So I'm also always trying to learn about that as well.
So when I think of signs outside of like historic houses or places, venues, I think of those like bronze ones. They're much smaller than that. They're sort of hard to read. So what inspired you guys to make the signs colorful? Like, we can see the benefit of it, right? But like, what made you guys go in this direction for the signs?
So that's a great question. I think we worked with a really good group of researchers and designers who knew that we wanted the history to have a certain energy, I think, towards it, right? That the civil rights movement, I mean, it's in there, it's in the word movement, right? It is something that people had to wake up every day and work for and move for and fight for. And maybe, to give people a sense, hey, don't walk by this sign, you might actually be interested. Some of the older signs that you'll see draw on some, what do I say, like history used to be sort of related to like very honorific things, like this person did this and they're very special, and many of them were. And there's sort of a traditional way to approach historic signage. And very quickly you can be your eyes can sort of glaze over and you can say, wow, that's too many signs, or I'm not interested in that sign. So we wanted to do colorful and as many images as possible. That's not to do a disservice to the other signs. One of my favorite super nerdy things to do is, and I think you might be of my level, Tiana, because it's about why did somebody put something in the ground? We're getting late in the conversation, but I'll just say this. There are monuments in our recent history that have been removed, but let's think about who put them there. They didn't necessarily put them there as a monument to that specific general, but it wasn't related to that war. It was related to trying to say something else in the time that it was installed. So I won't get into it now, but if you look at who installed this sign, who installed this monument, and why, you can sort of read into a little bit more of those layers of history. So I hope in the signs that we put in the ground now and moving forward, if they say, okay, Anacostia Trails Heritage Area put this sign in, wow, they were really trying to be as inclusive as possible. And I know it was really well researched and, something like that, instead of like, oh, they put, their research wasn't very good, or that wasn't very interesting. So you always got to think about the source of the information as well. History could definitely have its own spin to it. So thinking about the source and the author of that. So I hope that when people see signs that we've put in, especially recently, they know the time and intention that we've put into it to be accurate and inclusive. So not one, sort of without the other. So I think history should also be accurate. So, Yeah, I hope everybody just has a whole new respect for signs and trails.
As someone who has studied quite a bit of Civil War era monuments and things, I really appreciate this conversation because it's something, we mentioned the Maryland 250 and trying to it's really hard for people right now to celebrate 250, to get people energized about it because of what's going on in the world today. And I love how y'all and, library is part of this too, but we've really focused on, more of the movements within that history and really celebrating a people and how far we've come, as opposed to kind of sticking in this for lack of a better expression, excuse my graduate school but dead white men. It is
right.
we have to, we're going to broaden this picture, we're going to fill it in with color, we're going to provide some music, we're going to make it rich. And I just thought, maybe just before we close, kind of talk a little bit about your work with the 250 movement and kind of what energizes you to
sure.
be such a dynamic leader for all of us. I think
that's really wonderful. Thank you, and thank you for your participation. You can't convene people if people aren't
there
together, right? So here's a pop quiz. How many Revolutionary War battlefields are in Maryland?
13?
There's got to be a few hundred.
No.
1.
Really?
1. So there was in St. George's Island, and if I'm wrong, I know somebody on the YouTube comments will correct me, and I'd be happy to be corrected. My understanding is that St. George's Island in southern Maryland is one of the only sites of a skirmish during the Revolutionary War. And what I think is, so that immediately forces the hand of Marylanders and Prince Georgians sort of saying, well, okay, we know we had a role. We had very, brave soldiers and militia up in very important battles in New York and New Jersey, but we don't have that place-based connection. So I think that really played into the mission and motivation of my organization to be inclusive. We weren't tied to this specific site at this time period. So it sort of gave us this open book opportunity, and we are taking it. We are saying, everything is important in history and everybody's experiences, and even more so getting together at this time period at our block party and to learn together, either it's genealogy or go for a history bike ride, but it's about the past, but also about connecting today, because we're not tied to those historic stories. We can just say, we're just going to be together and we're going to look back, but we're going to be present today and, make plans for the future. So it's an interesting anniversary specifically for that reason and for our location. So I think that we've tried to put that into PGC 250.
And we're definitely talking about our mission statement with 250. Give it another few years and we'll talk about the Constitution. But just that whole mission statement, putting it out there with the declaration, I think is definitely something worth celebrating. So.
Well, I am the person who has to say that unfortunately we're out of time, and I know we still have lots more that we want to talk about. I have so many thoughts as a Canadian. I have so many thoughts about the War of 1812, because let me tell you, Canada's surprised that Maryland or anybody in America would think that would be something to celebrate, because we have a different perspective about it. And literally, I'm a history major, so we have a very different understanding of the outcome of War of 1812 than Americans, for example. And that would be a great thing to unpack. How can two different people have such a different experience? And so, anyways, my point is there's many, many, many more things we could talk about, but we are out of time. Meg, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great to be able to feature you. And
I was honored. Thank you.
To everyone who tuned in, whether you're watching us live or you're tuning on demand later, thank you for taking the time to be with us. You are why we do what we do. And we really encourage you to learn more about the Anacostia Heritage Trails Heritage Area. We have shared their website in the chat along with some other websites, but it's anacostiatrails.org, all one word, all squished together. And we invite you to see what programs the library has coming up. You can visit pgcmls.info/events. And we invite you to stay up to date with the Office of Human Rights at civilrights.mypgc.us. And we really hope that we'll see you at some of our upcoming events. There's a big Women's History Month symposium co-hosted by our office and the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights this Saturday, for example, at Creative Zootland from 9:30 to 12. It is free and welcome to all to attend, so please come down. We have Lunch and Learn returning on March 31st with our old friend Nick Brown. If you have been watching events for the library for a while, you may remember Nick, who is just a wonderful colleague. He and his now present colleague, David Plylar, are discussing their new book, Let the People Hear It, Concepts from the Library of Congress at 100. And then Meg mentioned some housing discrimination, and the Office of Human Rights is holding a virtual event on April 6th about National Fair Housing Month. So please check out our website, which I said before, to learn more about that. That was just a lot of words. But really what I want to say also is, Tiana, it's been awesome, buddy. Thank you for being with us and for all that you've brought to our programs. You've just been fantastic. Meg, I will probably see you on a Friday coming up soon, right? For our Maryland 250 planning?
Tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Well, it is coming up soon.
Yes.
Coming up tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.